The river is your mother. It's your music, it's your inspiration. You have a bond, it's a mysterious bond. I'm not a poet, but the river definitely sings to you. It fed us, it transported us. You learn to row a boat. I feel safer on a river than I do on a road with a motor car. Part of the Hunter River, the estuary. There was man-made Walsh Island, Mosquito Island, Dempsey Island, Ash Island. As Dad said to me, now your boat's wood, and if you ever ship water and you capsize, don't leave your boat. Hang on to it, it'll float, and tread water till somebody rescues you. So I didn't feel frightened. We could just run wild. We had a little boat. We could play pirates. And she's a great mother. She believed girls shouldn't be allowed to rip and climb trees. And Dad had a swing for us, and we made tree houses, and we made our own fun. My dog, Flossie, was taken by a shark. A big sleeper came down, and I hammered a fruit box to it, and you'd sit in it and pretend it was a canoe with, and my dog's swimming beside me. So I get out, and just as I get ashore, a shark comes along and takes Flossie. The yelp from the dog and the blood, and the dog disappears. I used to row myself to work from Mosquito Island, out of Mosquito Creek, down into the South Channel, directly opposite the big gas holders that BHP had, those big tall things. Rowed across to that if there was a southerly wind blowing, because you'd be sheltered along the southern bank and get to the Black Wharf at Ingall Street. It was called the Black Wharf because the Waratah Council at the time, they used to bring down the human dung from the pan system before it was sewered, and it was carted out and dumped at sea. That's why it was the Black Wharf, because it got black with human four-letter word excreta. Largely, I think we were the islanders, because when I worked at McFadgen's, it got round Newcastle, oh, there's a girl working, she's from the island. They'd come in and look at me. And I said to Mother, what the devil do they think we're looking at? We weren't monkeys. You can't go around with your hair perfect all the time if you row boats and ride bikes to work. But now they have wind machines to harass the model's hair, so I've come into fashion. They had a philosophy, my parents, that you had to share what wealth you had. Well, they had no wealth, but Dad was a wonderful gardener. And when we went to Mosquito Island back in 1939, we left the camp. We moved over at the end of the May holidays. Within no time, he dug up this enormous vegetable garden. I don't know how he had the strength, because he was still coughing and recovering from TB. But he did it, and he could grow anything. Yeah. That's one of the reasons they went there, because the soil was so rich. Newcastle's soil was very poor, not good for growing. The men had joined up in the army, and there weren't enough men to grow the vegetables and stuff up at Maitland and all those areas. It was suggested that they stew lucerne and stinging nettles as a substitute green vegetable. Dad hit the roof. We're not eating stinging nettles, we're not eating lucerne, I'll go into mass production. And he sowed beans and peas and lettuce. We knew it was impending. Japan was at our gates. We were warned about that. And they announced Pearl Harbor, and I ran down to tell Dad, who was putting his nets in his boat, and I told him, and I said, what will we do if the Japs get here? And he looked at his grappling hook. He had nothing else. He said, we'll go up river. If they get here, they'll be flat out finding us in the mangroves, because he had all these children and mother and our dogs and our cat, Tarpot, and 2 ducks, Donald and Diddle, our pet ducks. That's all we had was a grappling hook with a point on it to defend us with. We were naive, as we often laughed about this, because Japan went through Southeast Asia, jungle and everything, in no time. There was a ring of blackberry bushes. We dug an air raid shelter in the middle of this blackberry patch, thinking if the Japs did come, they'd get tangled up in the blackberries and wouldn't be able to get us. We have to laugh, don't you? How naive we were. It filled up with water. Dad said, bloody useless. He said, never mind, we'll use it as a well to water the gardens. We would have drowned in it. Newcastle was shelled. We woke up this June winter night in 1942 and hear this, and we all go outside with Dad and Mum. It's about 2 o'clock and we hear boom, boom. We all thought with Dad that it was our guns practicing. But there was one puzzling thing. The sky was lit up brilliantly. We could see the steelworks, the floating dock there across Rotten Row and down to Newcastle, just like almost like day. Next day, my father and brother found the parachute. Dad surmised that this is what had lit up the sky that night of the shelling. He's showing it around the pubs, and it was in Stiffy Amos's pub, or the Stag and Hunter. Someone must have rang up because these officials came and took it from Dad and said, oh, it's part of the war, we have to hand it in and you might get it back later. Eventually it got over to Mum, and Mum cut it up and made blouses for my sisters out of it. It was silk, you see. Audrey, my sister, she was 6 years younger, she heard a big plop in Mosquito Creek and she believes that a shell fell in the creek that night. The Japanese knew what they were firing at. They were after the steelworks. They hoped to make a hit on the steelworks, but they didn't. And we see, as we get down towards the point of what was Walsh Island, in the white sand just shining, and it's this unexploded shell. Well, our immediate reaction was go and tell the soldiers. So we rushed back and we see Captain Weaver. They put us in the launch. They took the shell aboard and they took it to there where their guns were, and they got somebody over, and it was deloused, as they called it. I can remember when I was about 5, or 1931, Dad had caught a lot of mullet and he made himself a smokehouse on the riverbank in front of this little tiny house we had. Got the smoke going and he opens the fish up and they're full of tar. He looked across at the works and he said, they're killing the river. I've never forgotten it. And it's right, they treated the river as a sewer. Mum and Dad left the island when they started the island reclamation scheme. Read the island destruction scheme. They just filled in the estuary, and what have they turned it into, those islands? A coal heap, a great mass of coal. The dust comes across here, people's lungs are full of it. It's in your nose. I wipe it off my furniture. It's industry. My father's last injunction was me when he was dying. I'm sitting beside him at Newcastle Hospital. He said to me, now I know you'll live up to it. You won't be greedy and you'll do good, and keep an eye on the river. The river was very precious to us all and to him. So I've tried to live up to those requests. Malcolm, my partner, came and he said, oh Vera, ABC has announced that they're having a bus tour of work on the Ash Island. You ought to ring up and go. So I did. And that's how I met Peggy Savobin. We used to meet once a month to plant trees and bushland on Ash Island to rehabilitate it. And we used the list of the native plants listed by the Scott sisters, Helena and Harriet.
How do you think your father would have felt about that?
Oh, Dad would have been thrilled. Well, I was a bit embarrassed. I'll tell you why, because we were brought up to try and put back into the community something of what you've taken out. And I've worked with all these people, and as I've said, well, I accept on their behalf because I've worked with hundreds of people and they deserve it much as I do. But why they pick on me, I don't know. And I've said that they should ask you before and then you can say, no, I'd rather you didn't put my name up. But they don't do that. They don't do it. I chose to live in Stockton for the sole reason that I can go out my front door and look and I can see the Hunter River. So that the river's in my blood. The river unites the island people. Its tides, its move, the gales, the storms, everything. And the men used to watch us along the steelworks bank, lice us and see us rowing up. Years later, my husband and I are having a meal on a holiday up at Shoal Bay, and this man, he said, I know who you are. You're the girl who used to row the river. We used to hear you singing, and I used to sing, you know, the White Cliffs of Dover and the Road to Gundagai. Well, it gives you a rhythm. You're rowing to the rhythm of the song as well as the river. In my mind, it says, you can do it, you see?